Okay. Guten Mayit. The previous Rebbe has a very interesting excerpt of his diary about when he was 9 years old. And this excerpt is about a similar year to this one. Oops, sorry about that. Hold on a second. Similar setup to this year, where there was a 3-day yontif. It was Thursday, Friday, Shabbos, and the previous Rebbe said that his father noticed that he was spending a lot of time Moshe ben Yamin the Malam, Moshe ben Yamin the teacher. Moshe ben Yamin was a someone who's very knowledgeable of the Tanakh, and he hired him and knowledgeable in many other areas in language and he knew a lot of books of Torah ethics. And so Rebbe Rashab hired him to test the previous Rebbe on Mishnayos and the Mishnah that he's meant to memorize, to encourage the previous Rebbe to devote time to Mishnah. This Ramesh Ben Yamin actually is buried in Worcester, Massachusetts, and he's known as a very, very prominent chassid of the Rebbe Rashab. So the Rebbe Rashab called in his son to test him on the Mishnayos, and the previous Rebbe was able to repeat the entire Seder Zrayim, which is incredible feat. Someone 8, 9 years old to be able to memorize the entire Mishnah of Seder Zrayim, and he's able to repeat it within an hour and 15 minutes. And he's also able to repeat the Seder's Moyed, the next Seder, the next order of Mishnah. There are 6 orders of the Mishnah. He's able to repeat that entire order of Mishnah in an hour and 25 minutes. The Rebbe Rashab was very pleased, and the previous Rebbe had been given a booklet from his teacher, Moshe Ben Yamin, called Shakdonim V'Atzlonim, a book called Those Who Are Diligent and Those Who Are Lazy. It was a book that he made, a gathering of various stories about children who are diligent, children who are lazy, a gathering of different sources. He made this little booklet out of it, and he gave it to the previous Rebbe to read during this 3-day holiday. So after the 3-day holiday, on the during the Chol Hamoed, after the previous Rebbe was tested, he had the temerity to ask his father. So he showed his father the booklet. His father looked at the booklet. He enjoyed it, and the previous Rebbe said that he wants to learn how to write. He said Rabbi Moshe Ben Yamin is a very skilled orator. Moshe Ben Yamin would always speak in Lashon Kodesh. He would say stories in Hebrew, in the Holy Tongue, and mixed together with the language of the Talmud. And he wanted that Ramesh Ben Yamin should teach him how to write. So the Rebbe Rashab said that you should learn a lot of Gemara and Medrash, and you will be able to know how to write. The previous Rebbe wasn't satisfied, and he really wanted to know how to write, and so he told when the Rebbe Rashab told him that he should learn a lot of Mishnah and Gemara and Medrash and know how to write, he broke out crying. And the Rebbe Rashab said, "Why are you crying?" And the previous Rebbe said, "Because I really want to learn how to write." So the Rebbe Rashab said that you already know how to write. He said, I don't know how, even one pisco, I just know the letters, but I don't know how to basically express myself in writing. And that's why he wanted Moshe Ben Yamin to teach him. So Rebbe Rashab said to him, focus on learning Gemara and Medrash, and when you'll grow older, you will know how to write. It's known that the previous Rebbe was a Kasver Rabba. His writing was extraordinary. Just his letters, he wrote over 1,000,000 letters. That just his letters, and besides all the Chassidic discourses and other works of the previous Rebbe. So The previous Rebbe was actually shortly afterwards was given on the 27th of Nisan. He was given a seder at the age of 9 years old, a certain regimen of study, um, which included time to spend on writing as well. And the previous Rebbe was of course very satisfied with this, and he continues in his diary and he says a story. Perhaps the story is a little bit too out of sync, perhaps with the nature of the holiday, but the holiday of Pesach is meant to give us a sense of faith in Hashem, to know that Hashem listens to us. So, and it has a happy ending also. So perhaps it's not out of sync with the holiday. The story is the previous Rebbe said that in the year Tafresh Nun Aleph, in 1891, in the wintertime, his father took ill, and he was then 11 years old. And of course, he was very upset about this. Previous Rebbe said that he spent most of the time, besides his studies in school, he was crying a lot and praying for his father. He said his father's condition wasn't as bad as he was making it out to be, but it still really bothered him very deeply. He said his father had traveled to other regions in Russia because of health reasons, and he had been in the care of his grandmother, Rebbe Rivka, the wife of the Marash, and now his father had just returned for a year and a half, and now his father is again not well, and it really bothered him, bothered him very deeply. And his studies, he spent some time saying psalms instead of studying as much as he was before, hoping that God would send his father a refuah, heal his father. And one day in that winter, the previous Rebbe approached Reb Zalman Leibele. Reb Zalman Leib was entrusted with taking care of the Ohel, of the resting place of the Tzemach Tzedek and the Rebbe Marash. So the previous Rebbe went over to Reb Zalman Leibele, and he asked him if he would perhaps agree to take him to visit the Ohel. It was snowing. It was it was bitter cold. Reb Zalman Leibele knew how the previous Rebbe's mother, Rebbe Sarah, and his grandmother, Rebbe Rivka, had also visited the Ohel on various occasions to beseech the mercy from Hashem for the Rebbe Rashab. And he knew the situation wasn't perfect, and so he agreed to take the previous Rebbe to the Ohel. The previous Rebbe he said this Reb Zalman Leib was short, but he took very strident steps in the snow towards the Ohel, and he had a hard time catching up. He said every step he took, he almost fell down. It was snowing, it was steep, and it was very bitter cold. So Reb Zalman Leibele had to wait for him and help him because he kept on falling down, almost falling down every step he took. And the previous Rebbe said that eventually they reached the Ohel, and when he came into the Ohel, seeing the snow on the tombstones of his grandfather, the Marash, and his great-grandfather, the Tzemach Tzedek, and as halacha mandates, reciting the blessing when seeing the tombstones of those who passed away, there's a certain blessing that's recited, Asher Yatzer Es Chamedin V'Zonas Chamedin. So after reciting that blessing and looking at this, he said even before he went into the Ohel, his heart was exploding with emotion as he opened the door of the Ohel, and then seeing the tombstones and the snow and the darkness and the quiet, it really touched him very deeply. And he said rivers of tears erupted from him as soon as he entered the Ohel, and he said he couldn't recite any psalms because he was so emotional, and he didn't recite any psalms. Instead, he turned to the Tzemach Tzedek and the Marash. He says, "Holy grandparents, holy grandfathers, holy Ohel Gazedis." And he was thinking as he's turning to them, about his father's condition, and how his father's a tzaddik and his father's a chassid, and he asked them to please beseech on high that his father should recover, his father should get better. and he's just very emotional. And as the moments go on, he's getting more and more emotional. And Reb Zalman Leib, seeing the previous Rebbe pouring out, crying, he also started to cry. And he put his hand in the previous Rebbe and he said to him that ask mercy because so that your father should be able to live. Those words of Reb Zalman Leib, ask mercy as your father should be able to live, that really broke the previous Rebbe completely. And he continued to pray and to daven and to ask for a blessing from his. This was in the wee hours in the morning, before it became light. That's what the previous was in the Ohel, and davening for some time. Again, he was too emotional to recite any former Tillim, and the Rebbe Leib instructed him to light a candle as customary, and to recite that phrase in the Minor Lashon, the phrase in the booklet that's recited at the Ohel, when you light a candle. So after the previous Rebbe was so emotional and he was so taken, the Rebbe Leib had brought him out of the Ohel, and as they were leaving the Ohel and approaching back to the city, it was already daybreak. It wasn't bright yet; it was still dark, but the marketplace was already filling with people, and from a distance they saw. The previous Rebbe said they saw Reb Chaim, the butcher, and they saw Reb Avram Don, and they saw that, and they exclaimed, "We just came from the Chatzar, we just came from the courtyard of the Rebbe, and there's been a change for good. And Baruch Hashem, the crisis has passed. The doctors had been speaking about that the illness was going to reach a certain elevated, dangerous, more dangerous state, and once the crisis reaches, then he'll be able to recover. But the illness hasn't gotten to its full intensity, but now the doctors were saying that the Rebbe Rashab has already past the crisis state of the illness, and now he's going to recover and things are good. And so when the previous Rebbe got to his home, no one asked him where he was because the house was filled with joy and happiness because people were talking about the Rebbe Rashab's recovery, how he's doing a lot better. And in that, the house was teeming with all the relatives of the previous Rebbe, like his uncle, Reb Zalman Arin, and Mendel Mesharis, and Mendel, who worked in the home of the Rebbe Rashab. And the doctor, there was a doctor that took care of the Tzemach Tzedek Marash, very expert, very noted expert named Dr. Hibbenthal. And the Rebbe Rashab was then being treated by a Dr. Brody and a Dr. Agaratsky, who were both very devoted doctors. Dr. Brody was a very, very close, very loved the Rebbe Rashab a lot. In addition to just taking care of the Rebbe Rashab medically, he would visit the Rebbe Rashab because he was interested in all kinds of wisdoms, and the Rebbe Rashab would talk to him and answer his questions about various wisdoms, various sciences. So the previous Rebbe entered the home, and there was a tumult in a positive way, a happiness that the crisis is over, that Rebbe Rashab had recovered. And the previous Rebbe said to himself that he was certain that it was because of his visit to the Ohel that his father was now on the mend. The previous Rebbe approached his teacher, Reb Nissen, another teacher of his, Reb Nissen, and the previous Rebbe said to Reb Nissen what he had done. He had gone to the Ohel, and Reb Nissen asked the previous Rebbe, he told the previous Rebbe, you did a good thing, that was a good move. And he said to him, have you drunk any tea yet today? So the previous Rebbe said he had not drunk tea. So Reb Nissen told the previous Rebbe, if so, you should not eat and drink it all today. The previous Rebbe was thinking to himself, he should ask his teacher what more he could do to help his father's health. And so when it came to Nissen said to him, it's good that you didn't eat yet. Don't eat yet at all today. Continue your fast. And so the previous Rebbe, and he told the previous Rebbe, go now and pray with a minyan. And when you finish praying, come back to me and I'll tell you what to do next. So the previous Rebbe came back, and the Reb Nissen, the previous Rebbe's teacher, gave the previous Rebbe a whole regimen of things to do on that day as part of his fasting. It's interesting that the Reb Nissen told the previous Rebbe to continue fasting because generally, according to Jewish law, it's only considered a fast if you accept it as a fast the day before. But apparently there is another dimension to fasting, which would be beyond the halachic requirements of fasting and the halachic definition of fasting. And so this told the previous Rebbe that he should fast, and so that's what he did. At the end of the day, the previous Rebbe he prayed the evening prayer, and he went back to his home, and there Dr. Brody and Dr. Agorotsky were discussing the condition, and Dr. Brody noticed the previous Rebbe was all upset, and he said, "Why are you so upset?" The previous Rebbe said, "I'm upset because I haven't seen my father in 2 weeks. They don't let me they don't let me in. I want to see my father." And Dr. Brody went into at that point he had to go back into the Rebbe Rashab. There was a conference then of doctors at 5 o'clock in the evening, and after some time the doctors come out, and the previous Rebbe said that he had captured the heart of this doctor because when the previous Rebbe was 5 years old, he had become ill, and this doctor was very exacting and about people following his advice to the T. And the previous Rebbe, as a child, was very precise in following all his instructions, and because of that encounter with the previous Rebbe, he captured his heart, and they were close. So he told him that he's upset. He wants to see his father. He hasn't seen him. The Rebbe was away for a year for health reasons. Now he's back for a year and a half, and this last 2 weeks he hasn't seen his father at all, and they don't let him go in. Anyways, at that point, the doctors had a conference, and the previous Rebbe was outside the room, and he suddenly the Mendel, the attendant of the Rebbe Rashab, came over to the previous Rebbe and he said, "Your father is calling you." The previous Rebbe walked into his father's room and he's seeing his father's pale face. And here he didn't say a word. Just walked in, and seeing his father's pale face and his condition, as we can state, the Rebbe was unable even to lift to sit up. It broke him, but the Rebbe Rashab told the previous Rebbe, called by his name, Yosef Yitzchak, have you been davening during this time with a minion since he's been ill? Have you been studying? The previous Rebbe said, "Yes, I haven't missed davening 3 times a day with a minion, and I have been continuing my regimen of study." So the Rebbe Rashab asked him, "Did you drink tea yet today?" So previous Rebbe said he was in a quandary, because on the one hand, he didn't want to lie to his father. On the other hand, he wanted to keep this all a secret. He didn't want people to know how he had gone to the Ohel. In fact, he had told his teacher, Rab Nissen, "Please don't tell anyone," and Rab Nissen promised him that he wouldn't tell anyone. So he wasn't sure what to do. On the one hand, he knew his father had divine inspiration. On the other hand, he knew that there are certain things that even the righteous who have divine inspiration aren't told by Hashem. For example, he was remembering then, as when his father asked him this question about Yitzchak and Yaakov, how Yitzchak withheld from Yaakov the sale of Yosef, and perhaps he was thinking, perhaps tzaddikim don't know about events that are pertinent to themselves. Maybe they have divine inspiration, but perhaps from heaven they are not allowed to know about things that are pertinent to themselves. And therefore, he wasn't sure if he should tell his father or not. But he was in a quandary. He didn't want to lie. He didn't want to, but he didn't want to say. But he was saved at that moment. His mother came in, and his mother said that the doctors have said that he should have 3 cups of milk. Doctors were discussing after the conference, after the previous Shabbat was telling them why Dr. Ragorotsky, why he was upset. The doctor said that to Dr. Ragorotsky said to the other doctor that they have to make a regimen for the Rebbe Rashab, what he needs to do. And so in continuation to this, the previous Rebbe's mother came in and saying that he has to drink milk. So Rebbe Rashab took some of it, but he said that he's not able to drink the whole thing now. So he said, "My son, Yosef Yitzchak, he will stay here and he'll take care of me, and he will make sure that I help me drink the milk." The previous Rebbe said his joy knew no bounds. His father saying he could stay there and he could serve his father. He felt so good about being able to be there with his father and be able to attend to his father. The previous Rebbe said he was thinking then about Esav. It says about Esav that although Esav was a murderer and did all kinds of terrible things, But before Esav would serve his father, Esav would put on clothing, special clothing to wear it in order to honor his father. He would wear special clothing to honor his father. So the previous Rebbe said to himself, if Esav wore special clothing to honor his father, how much more so myself? He felt good about the fact that he was still fasting. Is that I'm able to serve my father with a pure heart while I am now while I'm fasting. This is a good thing. He felt good that he was able to attend to his father while in a state of fasting. So the previous Rebbe is in the room, and the Rebbe Rashab noticed that he was upset. So the Rebbe Rashab said, "Why are you upset?" He told the Rebbe Rashab that he doesn't know. He wants to see the Rebbe Rashab, and he wants to see his father. And it's been now a while; they're not letting him in. So a light smile came on the face of the Rebbe Rashab, and the Rebbe Rashab said that he will make sure that from now on, no one will stop him from visiting the Rebbe Rashab. And from that day on, the previous Rebbe spent most of the time with the Rebbe Rashab. And as the Rebbe Rashab, Baruch Hashem, from that time on, it was a marked recuperation in his condition. And as the previous Rebbe noted, that it was because of his prayer that its condition changed. So the Rebbe Rashab recuperated until on the 24th day of Tevis, which is the anniversary of the passing of the Alter Rebbe. The Rebbe Rashab would often recite Kaddish for the Alter Rebbe on that day. And by that day, he had already recuperated somewhat, so he was able to sit up and to go to the next room and to say Kaddish. That's what the previous Rebbe writes in his diary, again, which begins with the story about his wanting to learn Hebrew grammar, wanting to learn how to write, and continuing to this story about his father and his father's health. I think this story is very consonant with the miracle of leaving Mitzrayim and how Hashem is so close to us and listens to us. And just like on the night of the Seder, we say, Man nishtan alayla, we say, Father, I want to ask you 4 questions. And everyone says this. And the reason we speak in this way, Father, I ask you 4 questions like a child, is because night of the Seder, I'm about to finish. Night of the Seder, the love of Hashem for us is like a love of a child. And throughout the holiday of Pesach, this is the theme of that Hashem's love for us, like Na Yisrael Vig, as it says in Song of Songs. Jewish people are called a child, and therefore I love them. And therefore there is a special power to our prayers and our prayers for the miracles of wonders of Hashem which we are witnessing now in Israel. And Hashem should continue to show the miracles in an open, clear way. Until if no one, God forbid, should be no more karbonos, no more past, no more death. Instead, we should see, as we read today in the Haftorah, the resurrection of the dead, the coming Mashiach Tzidkenu, the Karamash of Tchias HaMesim. A good moed, a freilich moed. Moed, Baldavid.